Now, coming to tonight's session. In the last couple of years, many organizations have retreated to mass marketing instead of data-driven marketing due to rapidly changing customer behaviors. But several of them are now looking to double down on precision marketing by using new sorts of data, updating their models, and retraining of their algorithms. This is going to be an insightful session to learn about some of the data strategies for marketing. Please allow me to welcome our eminent and distinguished speaker of tonight, Neeraj Pratap Sangani. Neeraj is the Chief Executive Officer at Hansa Security, one of India's leading data-driven marketing organizations that helps businesses acquire customers intelligently, retain them optimally, and manage them profitably. Neeraj is a CXM and marketing specialist with experience in business marketing consulting, brand building, strategic marketing, and digital marketing. He's the founder of the blog CXM Lab, which is a learning ground to express thoughts, ideas, and tools that enables marketers to think, reflect, and make the right decisions for their brands and organizations. Neeraj is an alumni of ULCA Anderson School of Management, having done his PGPX in General Management. He has done his Masters in Commerce and Marketing from Nasi Munji College of Economics. On the personal front, Neeraj is an avid theatre enthusiast. He writes, directs, and acts in Hindi plays. He's a close observer of the state of human rights in India and the world. He has a postgraduate diploma in human rights from the Indian Institute of Human Rights. A very warm welcome to you, Neeraj. It's an honor to have you here. Handing the session over to you now.
Thank you. Thank you, Shama. Really looking forward to interacting with what you guys are doing. And it's pretty impressive. Really hoping that all of you find the next 45 minutes very valuable going forward from a data-driven marketing perspective. Shama, I'm not able to share my screen, so you'll have to make me the host so that I can share my screen. Yes. Shama, is the screen visible now?
Yes, Neeraj, go on.
Thank you so much. Let's get started without wasting any more time on this. You know what? I will try to demystify this whole concept of data, analytics, AI, and how it will be used going forward. We are far too exposed to these terminologies. Professionals in the space try to really complicate the understanding of this. So I think the world and the marketing space and CXOs need a bunch of people who kind of really simplify things for them and really make sense of all that is happening around them. And I think that is the biggest challenge from a learning point of view, from upskilling point of view, which people really need to understand and get a grip on. I actually go back in time. What is happening today was actually showcased in a movie, and this movie came more than 20 years back. Minority Report is the movie. Let me just play the video for you, and then I'll have a quick chat about it.
Neeraj, is there an audio for this?
It's not relevant.
Okay.
You can watch the video.
All right. Yeah.
This was 20 years back. You know, the movie was Minority Report, and there's a scene where the protagonist sees billboards targeted directly at him by his name when he's walking through a mall. It's a classic dystopian sci-fi narrative because the individual has no control over his identity and who has access to it and how it is being used. So at one level, it is very exciting what data analytics and artificial intelligence are driving in the marketplace. At another level, it's scary. So there's a fine line to be walked in this entire process. And how do you generate value out of this for businesses and for customers? And that's the fine line I think CXOs and marketers and leaders of the future would really need to tread, because we have let out a nuclear weapon out there in the marketplace. How well it is used, it can either be constructively used to generate energy, to generate future power, or it can be used to destroy a lot of things. So that's the first caveat I wanted to make. Demystify stuff, make it simple, use it for a good purpose, and make sense of it. How does one put together an integrated customer strategy? And I again keep it very simple. So what are the values and objectives? How do you define the KPIs for it? How do you create a situation? How do you detect the signals in that context? What are the opportunities? What are the pattern recognition? What kind of customers are coming in? Where are they coming in from? How long are they going to be with you? How do you create customer segments out of that? Then how do you reframe all the information that you have? AI is perfectly fine, but there's a thing called human intuition, which most of us now kind of are hesitant to use. So how do you bring that into your prediction, into your simulations that you're putting together? How do you create the right implementation, the execution, the analytics process, and how do you create that entire loop out of that? Is the challenge which senior CXOs and CMOs are going to face in the future. How do product leaders come up with these kind of strategies? Demystify this whole thing. Role of people, role of technology, role of data very clearly need to be defined, and where the twain, or where do the three collide, or where do they collaborate? It will either collide or it will either collaborate. How do you work on those things? I think is a hugely important factor that most of us need to keep in mind. How does one put together a measurable data? Everybody talks, oh, we need a data-driven strategy. And in fact, whenever I'm in a very senior level meeting, a lot of CEOs tell me, Neeraj, I've been in presentations with my distribution team, my marketing team, my digital team, my sales team, 1 hour presentation each. And each of them came back and showed me that our teams have enabled 25% growth in business. For a fact, I know my business has grown only 12%. So how does this all add up? The KPIs each silo is presenting to the senior leadership really does not add up. And that's really a big challenge for businesses. How do businesses evaluate what is working, what is generating the marketing return on investments, what is really not working, how much should one invest in technology, how much should one invest in data science teams, how much, to what extent should they really get into the metrics or metrics of each of these measurements? And that is the big key challenge. Most of the organizations, I try to put them into 5 buckets. So on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the ideal scale, there are some people who are at the cusp of starting out on their analytics and data marketing strategies, whom I call the heroic guys. Then there are the specialist silos. If there is some evolution which has already happened, but it is again a siloed, tactical, process-driven approach to a level. Then the third, enterprise level coordination has started. All departments have started talking to each other. All the data is beginning to flow into one system. The fourth one, which is where a lot of BFSI businesses are beginning to emerge in the space, is there's a system driven. There is an analytics framework which has been put in place. There are defined standards, there is scale, there is adherence, there is a governance in place, and the infrastructure is sitting in a consolidated, more thought through, more connected manner at any point of time. Of course, 5 is the ultimate evolution, where we want all organizations to be analytics embedded in everything you do. It's part of the business strategy. And this is where, from operations role to a strategic role, the entire space of data and analytics really needs to evolve to that. How is it going to happen? What is the journey going to be like? What will facilitate those business outcomes? I kind of outlined few of the outcomes in my context. So what can data analytics really drive from a business point of view? It can drive great customer experiences from a customer point of view, more differentiated. So going forward, products are all going to be equal, right? Even if we know it for a fact, until COVID happened, 80 to 90% of the products or the technology products we bought are all made to probably in some of the same factories across China. So there's really no or not much product differentiation. How are brands going to differentiate themselves in the future? Products are going to differentiate themselves from an experience point of view, ease of buying point of view. Convenience is the big C from a customer point of view that really needs to be kept in mind. Some of the digital first companies have really built on this premise big time. It enables faster time to market. It enables more better insights, actionable insights, shows customer preferences, behaviors, differentiation from products and different services that you offer. Analytics and data can drive that from your perspective, from brand's perspective, really needs to be built on. It makes the organization's future ready. So there's a real tug of war at this point of time between legacy companies that have been in existence for a long time, have solid hard assets on the ground, and then there is this utopian cloud company which are coming in, no real assets on the ground, valuations going through the roof. How do you create a balance and all of that and make your organization future ready going forward? Innovation, differentiation, distinctiveness for brands, products, services, and organizations. Data and analytics can really drive that. And that, in short, will be the competitive edge that brands need to look for, products need to look for going forward. Some of the building blocks, it's an enterprise level view. How do you link analytics to KPIs? How do you create an enterprise data framework? How do you create enterprise implementation roadmaps across the organization? Infrastructure key, the technology piece cannot be kept separate from the data piece. More and more, and we'll show it to you how most of the companies and some of the large companies, and these are all the usual suspects, big names in the world, who are driving such a close integration between technology and analytics that the lines have really blurred. And really, you don't know whether this is data doing the work or is it technology doing the work. So that's where business is moved at a very, very fast pace. How do you embed these processes? Data must be embedded in every decision-making process. How do you do that in each of those business processes? It's a long journey. It requires a huge amount of skill. It requires a huge amount of collaboration across. So SMEs, expertise, how do you set up leadership teams who understand the role that these functions will play? How do you deliver excellence? What is the maturity assessment of the organization? How do you do the metrics? How do you measure business value creation by each of these things that you're going to put together? And of course, last but not the least is the governance piece, which I will talk about as we move forward. But diverse skills need to come together to solve this jigsaw puzzle. There is data, there is statistical mindset, there is domain knowledge, industry knowledge needs to be part of it. Ability to understand business logic problems, ability to solve those problems. Data might not have all the answers, or the data in front of you might not have all the answers. So where do you really look for the answers? And of course, the rest is the technology piece, the processing piece, and most importantly, and I think this is where the rubber really meets the road, is the storytelling piece. How do you make sense of the data and present it in a edible form or in a more relatable form to the decision makers? And this is where really a huge problem is there in terms of ability to explain to people who matter on what is the efficacy of the data and how effectively it can be put in place. As far as predictive analytics, it gives you a very big competitive edge. We all know all of this is in play. A lot of speakers over the past few days and over the next few days will really touch upon these topics. So I'm not going to deep dive into the exact models, what works, what doesn't work, but I'm going to give you a broad framework of what it does. So most of the data, and from a descriptive point of view, tells what happened. Then why is it happening? What if these trends continue? What is likely to happen next? What is the next best thing that we can make happen? These are some of the questions that need to be answered from a marketing perspective, from a customer perspective. I think data helps solve a lot of these questions if you have the right data in place. And again, recency of data is of paramount importance in this case. I already touched upon how do you tell the story? How do you visualize data? And once you have a fantastic visualization of data. It's very easy for people to consume it and very easy for people to appreciate what you're trying to bring onto the table. So these are some of the few tenets I think I wanted to share in that context. And when you're trying to build a customer-centric enterprise, I think the keyword going forward and the bridge between a great customer experience and a poor customer experience is data and analytics, embedded along with technology. And if we just demystify marketing as a whole, we can reduce it to 5, 6, 7 journeys that, what marketers do. What do marketers do? They want to drive awareness about their products and services in the marketplace. They want to acquire customers at a fast pace in the marketplace. They want to engage that customer. They want to give him better experiences. So the brand sticks in his head. So the product sticks in his head and he keeps coming back, which is where the retention comes into play. The loyalty to the brand comes into play. Loyalty is an abused word, but how do you keep getting the same set of customers back? Most of the digital first brands great at customer acquisition at this point of time. Are they successful in retaining those customers? The answer, plain and simple, is no. Actually, the brands that will win, the digital first companies that will win in the future, are the brands or the organizations which will be able to retain their customers, get them coming back to you again and again and again, and which is where the subscription models come into play. Some of the players, Amazon, Netflix, Spotify of the world, are on their way to build huge businesses on the subscription model. A lot of other organizations want to follow suit in that process. Very few are anywhere close to making it happen. But data analytics, the entire campaign management, the last mile connect, the automation, MarTech automation required in putting all of this together are some of the keys that will bring this entire process together. And I want to not spend too much time on this, but want to give you a sense of what is a customer intelligent enterprise. And it works only at 2 levels, and let's reduce it to 2 levels. One is the cost levers. It tries to improve and optimize marketing spends, optimize customer-centric processes. It reduces the cost to serve. You can really monitor each of these. You can ensure that data analytics gives you measurable outcomes and ensure that you are on top of the cost levers that you're trying to work with in the marketplace. The second lever that it works for is the revenue levers, growth of current base of customers, growth of share of wallet or market basket size, whatever you want to call it, reduce people moving out of your system. All of these are some of the important levers that a customer intelligent enterprise wants to drive and use data intelligence to drive these revenue and profitability parameters from their organizations. Now, this is all very well said, fine. There is a huge amount of data. Now, how do you shrink it into small data? And hopefully and magically it will become great data. Great data, I mean relevant data, which will give you business outcomes. Very, very difficult to accomplish. A lot of organizations are struggling. How do you really put a framework in place? Answers Equity is an analytics framework for customer lifecycle management. Now divided into 2 parts. One is the prospect lifecycle management and one is the customer lifecycle management. As we say, keep it simple, demystify the whole thing. There is an awareness stage, there is an acquisition stage, there is a management stage, there is a growth phase. So once people have in the new digital first companies, how do you drive the growth phase? And this is where the inflection point happens. Acquisition happens, a little bit of management happens, but how do you get that exponential 100x, 20x, 30x growth that you're looking for? Then the process becomes more and more difficult, the retention process and the win back process. There are enough launch tracking mechanisms, segment migrations, dormant behavior analysis. From a retail point of view, in the trend analysis, the LFL stuff, the product associations, the KPI tracking, key trends. Markets are evolving at a very fast pace. Consumer behavior is changing faster than we can imagine, faster than sometimes we can think. And how do you keep pace with those changes and bringing it into your product life cycles, bringing it into your customer life cycle management? How do you do all the analysis? How do you do customer segmentation? How do you do store profiling? How do you do analyze customer spends by store, by category, by medium? Which channels are effective? How do you have the RFM model worked out? The market basket analytics. And of course, the customer win back, which is the churn prediction. So these are multiple levels of interventions that data and analytics does. How do you make sense of it? How do you put it into a framework that will work at an organization level, not work only in silos with a set of people, are some of the things that product leaders and brand leaders need to keep in mind. And then big opportunity at this point of time. Some of the global organizations are on their way. We at Hansas Equity pride ourselves in trying to fuse data sciences with behavioral sciences. I think that is the big move and shift that needs to happen going forward. How do you understand? Data science will give you online transactions, offline transactions, information about the service requests, all the interactions you would have had in the digital media in the past. That information is there, and that can only lead to so much of understanding of the customer. But the behavioral data, what are the intents? What are the moments? What are the motivations? What kind of a lifestyle does an individual have? What drives his beliefs? What are his value systems? And if you start having that behavioral data even at an aggregate level, you can create much more sharper customer segments and customer data analytics going forward. And this is a big shift, and a lot of behavioral scientists need to be brought into the space to interact very closely with data scientists to build this entire fusion between data and behavioral sciences. The other important part is using external data. Most companies obsess about using the data that they have, but there is a whole personality that, say, Neeraj as a person has outside the one transaction that he's done with you. He's exploring the entire world. He's exploring the entire internet, doing various things. How do you inject external data into this entire thought process? How do you understand the broad parameters? And I'm not walking down the cookie world or the cookieless world when I'm talking about external data. I'm just trying to understand what are the trends that are happening and which are the behavioral aspects that can be picked up to really drive this fusion between data science and behavioral science. This is the future. This is where the market is headed from a marketing perspective. This is where big brands who get this right will start making a huge impact from a business perspective going forward. You work across industries, a lot of the large organizations, the BFSI space, the NBFC space, the insurance space, retail, automotive, pharma, and all of that. There are certain very embedded and empowered marketing decisions framework from an analytics point of view, which are embedded. I won't spend too much time on it. A lot of people hopefully would have spoken about it. But yes, these are the processes that happen: lead prioritization. How do you assess the risk? What are the recommendations? How do you drive retention? How do you drive future value potential, which includes the CLTV? How do you predict the customer lifetime value? Its customer lifetime value has been around for more than 20 years now. Everybody talks about it, but very few companies actually get it right. And then once I have that data, how do you actually break down that journey and really ensure that the customer delivers on the lifetime value which was promised to me 5 years ago or 3 years ago? So these are certain things which will need to be kept in mind. Some of the data points that will help building these structures, the channel mix equity world, the market potential value. What is at a pin code level, what is the potential of a part of the city or a town in India? You're talking of a few 100,000 villages and towns in India. There is a lot of pin code level data available. How do you map it to your transaction data, to your market potential data, in terms of which markets you are going after? What is the value that you're generating from a customer point of view? And what is the future potential of the markets that you're already operating in? Really, data can make your strategy, go-to-market strategy, much more sharper in this context. In fact, it can predict what is the lifestyle index. We do a lot of work in the context of credit worthiness or credit card scoring. So even thing like a credit card tells you a lot. In fact, if you look at the Indian market, we do the ethnicity study, which is your name itself reveals a lot of about you. So how do you inject all of those variables, which are really, really very sharp? It can be defined at an aggregate level into your system to really create very, very sharp strategies from a customer and marketing point of view. Technology, as we all know, is driving this data-driven marketing perspective globally. Over half of respondents for a survey done by CMO kind of are utilizing AI technologies for content personalization, generating customer insights using predictive analytics. B2C services companies are also using AI in their marketing activities. Some of them are using it with, and a lot of them are actually beginning to B2B players are also using it from an augmented and virtual reality part of it. But some of the key parameters: content personalization, driving customer insights, targeted decision making, customer segmentation. You can create hundreds of customer segments and really create meaningful content, meaningful content, context, and meaningful offerings for them. Of course, the rest programmatic stuff and all of you would be kind of aware of. Chatbots are part of our life now. AR, VR has been around for a long time. Some of the new things which are coming up, facial recognition, biometrics, have been around for some time. I'll talk about it in a short time. The rise of synthetic data. And as I said at the beginning of it, transaction data will only tell you so much about what is happening. Synthetic data is a new idea which has been around for some time, but it's beginning to now actively used in data-driven marketing. So without access to data, it sometimes becomes hard to make tools that actually work. Artificial information developers and engineers use a stand-in for real data. For example, it's considered to have huge potential when it comes to creating synthetic data for training of machine learning algorithms. Synthetic faces of people who have never existed can be created. I should talk about it in a bit of time. But synthetic data kind of enables data professionals to access the use of centrally recorded data while still maintaining the confidentiality of that data. And synthetic data comes with that power to replicate the important features of real data without exposing it in true sense. So it kind of takes care of the privacy issues that are beginning to crop up across the world and how my data is being used. And this will keep on exponentially increasing over the next couple of years. Couple of types of synthetic data: fully synthetic, partially synthetic, hybrid synthetic. But the basic point that we're trying to make here going forward is, these people don't exist. This case, synthetic data is also used for video, image, or sound to artificially render media with properties close enough to real life data. This similarly allows you to, like, as a drop-in or replacement of original data. So these images that you see were artificially created using generative GAN, or generative adversarial networks is what it is called. The system learned properties of real life people's pictures in order to generate fake images, but as real as it can get. I mean, nobody will tell me that, these are not real people, that don't exist. This method is helpful to augment databases. It's used to train machine learning algorithms. For example, when training video data is not available for privacy reasons, I mean, you can't share people's data, you can generate synthetic video data to resolve that. Similarly, you can use synthetic data to increase data sets, size of the data set, and diversity of the data set when training image recognition systems. So a lot of uses synthetic data is already being used to put to. Waymo is already using synthetic data to train autonomous vehicles. Waymo is, of course, Google. Alexa, Amazon has been doing it for some time for language systems. The Amazon Go vision recognition system has been using it extensively. The BFSI space, Amex has been using to improve fraud detection. Pharma companies are using it for clinical research. So it's across the board, across industries. Synthetic data is beginning to be used. Emotion recognition technology. A lot of players are beginning to use emotion. Just imagine the amount of different types of data now available to marketers. And if they get the key pieces, and what I'm trying to say is all of it is not relevant for all the industries. Different industries will have need for different data, and marketers and CXOs and product leaders will need to have that incisiveness, and that human intelligence will need to come into play to ensure that they pick and choose the right technologies. On last count, there are more than 10,000 different kinds of marketing, customer interface related technologies available. You don't need more than 5, 6, 7 of them, right? Or you can't handle more than those kind of technologies. So how do you use and pick those right technologies to ensure that you can understand what is relevant, which will give you the best insights, which will give you the best outcomes from a business point of view. Image detection, which is emotion recognition, go on to become a big thing from a retail perspective. And a lot of large retail brands across the world are beginning to use image recognition technology to good impact. Some of the other players who are beginning to use emotion recognition is the automotive industry. Some of the global big players are already using it. Some of the Indian players like Mahindra also started using these technologies to overall improve the customer experience and the car safety experience while the product is being used. And the entertainment industry worldwide, Hollywood is beginning to make big use of it. A lot of us in India will not know because we are exposed to Suryavanshis of the world. But there are a lot of movies and a lot of movie research which happens in Hollywood before movies hit the screen. And it actually captures people's faces, tracks facial behavior using infrared cameras to kind of get a sentiment analysis done of what the viewers are thinking about. And that helps them decide which scenes to keep, which scenes to change, which movies, what will work, what will not work. Federated ML. The techniques used by Federated ML ensure that data is kept on the device and not on a server, while still providing access to predictive AI modeling. This is, of course, going to be the way forward. The advanced ML models used in Federated ML keep the data in the data owner's hands, and it leads to great privacy. This approach is new take on data privacy, and this will grow into a big mega trend going forward. A good example is, of course, what I put up on screen is Siri. It's running on your iPhone, but it's not sending all your data to the Apple servers. So it's residing on your phone. So it gives you a sense of security in terms of which data is being passed on and which data is in your control and residing with you. So this is going to be another big thing which is going to make inroads across the ecosystem. AI ML innovations with NLG, natural language. We all understand Google phones. Already seen a lot of consumer applications on Google phones, other enterprise business applications, process automation based on unstructured data. When I say unstructured data, it's voice, it's text. Facebook has done extensive work in this, achieved impressive results in semi-supervised self-learning techniques utilizing AI and NLP. Self-supervised approach, which is the SEER approach, it's a lot of work in this space done by Facebook. It's one of the most promising ways to build machines that have the common knowledge, or as we say, the common sense to tackle tasks that are far beyond today's artificial intelligence capabilities. We already seen major advances in NLP as a result, where self-supervised models pertaining to very large models or enormous amounts of text has led to breakthrough in question answering, automated responses, natural language inferences, and more. In India, it's a challenge. We don't speak the same dialect. We don't speak in the same context. Those are challenges with the Indian market we're beginning to deal with. But globally, it has evolved a great deal, and it's a huge amount of potential in this context. How do you traverse the algorithmic future? And I think algorithms can change how we feel, right? And I'm not making a big pompous statement. We've seen this with Facebook's mood manipulation studies that we've seen. We've seen this with Google Shopping. We've seen this with Amazon recommendations, the next best product that you're trying to push to you. And how we use our devices, the app recommendations that come to us, social influence recommendation, friend recommendation, all of this coming into it. None of this is actually inherently negative, in my opinion. And in fact, each of them can really drive positive outcomes for people and for business. But that would require redefining how we use all of this, the objective of these algorithms. How do we drive social, human well-being using current data, mathematical limitations included, to really drive it for organizations? Brands, leaders, product leaders, marketers need a new approach to this problem. Need to build new algorithms from the perspective of the consumer and not only from the perspective of the company. There is never before was a time to have a perfect handshake between what the brand, what the product, what the organization, what the service stands for, and what the consumer needs. And we are increasingly seeing that brands that are successful, products that are successful in today's marketplace are really driven by this inherent, I won't say desire, but inherent need to be a part of the customer journey. And if you give that great experience, there is a very high likelihood of success coming your way. Algorithmic e-commerce, everybody is kind of now experiencing it, right? Ultimately, this will lead to a market shift that delivers more and more value from a consumer point of view. Where partners take a more product type approach to personalization and customer experience versus taking a consultative product approach to personalization, as they've done in some cases. There's a smart systemic digitization of business functions, which are till date manually handled. What algorithmic e-commerce also means is widespread utilization of AI and machine learning in the enterprise. Algorithmic e-commerce has been part of e-commerce for years. Okay, it's not something new that has come into play today. For example, Stitch Fix, the picture that I put on the screen now, is been personalizing online shopping experiences using algorithms and ML for years. But this is going to take center stage for businesses. And of course, we all know that what a big success Stitch Fix has become over the last few years. This will also have huge implications on creative outcomes from a marketer's perspective. If you're hiring agencies, or if you're hiring copywriters to produce content, for example, you will need to consider automation, create online catalog descriptions, link virtual catalogs with your online ordering system. If you run an e-commerce store but still utilize manual processes to track the orders, you'll need to digitize it, make it seamlessly connected to the e-commerce shop. Data must flow freely across the entire enterprise. Humans stay involved, but the backbone of your e-commerce strategy will need to be reworked. And automation and smart machines will come into the picture. Stitch Fix, again, as I said, every step of the customer journey is mapped, analyzed, and optimized by algorithms that they have put in place. Huge amount of thinking has gone into creating these businesses. I think some of the best practices are already out there, which can be made good use of by marketers going forward. Algorithms, we know, become a part of life. At one level, anomaly detection identifies outliers, values, and also fraud detection. Pattern recognition, which I say is the fusion of behavioral and data sciences. How do you discover patterns and trends in customer behavior? Predictive modeling, everybody knows. Recommendation systems. Recommendation systems have evolved to a nicety, right? How do they get better? Some of them obviously go wrong, but they're not a good example to take in any forum. Voice of customer. sentiment analysis. There's huge amount of video data. There's a huge amount of voice data. There's huge amount of text data. There is huge amount of what I call the digital body language data, which is not captured when creating marketing strategies. And this is where the big shift will happen. Some of the other things like conversational AI, chatbots and stuff like that is par for the course. All big brands are doing it, doing reasonably effectively, trying to minimize customer contact, but at the same time giving a kind of, not I would say seamless, but a frictionless experience to customers. So this is bread and butter now. How are you going to make all of this part of your entire thought process? Few things that we need to keep in mind when we're looking at data, when we're looking at analytical driven marketing, when we're looking at AI, when we're looking at tech driving a lot of these initiatives. There are biases, inherent biases present even in algorithms. In fact, a lot of algos reinforce human prejudices. So how do you kind of like sift them out of the system and really make sense of what is happening on the ground with the customer and with the services that you're offering? Algorithms typically value efficiency or fairness. Always we're trying to measure efficiency. So how effective was it, or how efficient was it, or what is the right thing to do? It might not always give you the right decision. It does not handle shades of gray well. The accountability of algorithms is the key. Now, it's not an easy answer, but how do you kind of get there over a period of time is something which will need to be kept in mind. Those who have access to algos and their databases have vast opportunity to manipulate large data sets. A lot of big players who are like running countries on their own really manipulate large data sets and really create havoc. No need to name any of them. We have seen enough of that happening across the world. So it's a dangerous trend. It's a short-term business gain trend. All of us need to be conscious of it, but large data sets can really be manipulated. Rapid boosts in productivity due to automation will certainly increase disparity between the haves and the have-nots, the employers and the employees. There will be reskilling, upskilling required. A lot of stuff which is happening manually will become irrelevant going forward. So how do you kind of make that transformation, especially in a country like India, where there is a huge human population which is hungry for jobs, and how do you create those opportunities is going to be a key thing. Most algos still are a black box. Explainable artificial intelligence, more transparency needs to be brought into the system, into the organization, so that people kind of start relating to it. Otherwise, it just becomes words. People who kind of believe, there is a set of believers and there is a set of skeptics. And then there is a war happening at any point of time. So how do you create more believers in the organization for data, for analytics, for data-driven marketing is the key, and senior leaders will really play a big role in ensuring that there is more trust and more belief in the system as far as data-driven marketing is concerned. Last but not the least, data protection, privacy. Brands are beginning and organizations are beginning to make sounds about wanting to take care of it. How much are they actually doing on the ground? I think governments are beginning to come into play. They will enforce a lot of laws. Like Indian data cannot go out of the country. It has to reside in servers in India. A lot of these laws, the data protection law is sitting in Parliament, awaiting approval. Once it kicks in globally, there are enough laws in US and in Europe already in play. Companies, products, organizations will really need to be on top of privacy and data concerns, personal information, PII information, not letting go of it out into the public domain. These are some of the key things which will need to be kept in mind, because that is where all of this needs to come into play from a good governance point of view. And I am a firm believer, actually, good governance leads to great data. If you have your governance is right, your systems right, all else, I tell it to a lot of my clients, will lead to a lake of data. Oh, I have so much data. I did not have a process. I did not have a governance. I did not connect the dots. I have a huge a sea of data, an ocean of data, but I really will not really make a lot of sense out of it. So if your data definitions are ambiguous, if data rules are vague, the rules that you set, the processes that you set are vague, is there enough training data? And that's where synthetic data also comes into play. Is the absence of loop closure. How are you continuously enriching that database? These are some of the key things that will need to be kept in mind when you are creating this whole strategy. There is a certain amount of time involved in all of this. Even creating and accessing trained data to help you make good predictions. Now, these are things that organizations will need to keep in mind. And there is a strong data governance requirement across organizations. I don't think a lot of Indian companies are giving the importance it deserves. It deserves the attention of the head of the company. And I think in a lot of organizations, they need to drive this entire thought process. So I think from a data analytics, technology, data-driven marketing perspective, these are some of the things which will drive the future. And we know that the future is already here. Is there enough skill or depth of skills available in the market? The answer is yes and no. There is skill, not to the requisite amount of people required in this context, but we are on our way. And that is the good news. And more organizations are getting conscious of it. All of you who are part of this call are working towards getting trained in this context. There are a huge amount of practitioners out there putting the word out, trying to get people to buy into this thought process, to ensure that we create a good mechanism, a good system in place, that we have a robust data-driven marketing strategist going forward, solid talent coming up in the marketplace. Really hope that all of you also get that opportunity. I saw the list of speakers for this, all respected big names in the industry talking about what they do and how they put forward their thought processes. So I am hoping that we will have the next crop of leaders coming from people like you driving this entire process. Of course, algos will be a way of life, but the fine balancing act is really required. And how do you put this together? So 20 years down, minority report, are we there? And this is the question. So it's easy to imagine, very difficult to execute it on the ground. We're still probably 20 years away, maybe 10 years away from making that minority report a reality. And AI, ML, data-driven marketing is driving that huge growth. We are at the forefront of it. There are some of the trends which I've shared with you today. Hopefully it has added value to all of you. Thank you for spending this time. Really looking forward to interacting with you over the next couple of minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Neeraj, for that brilliant and engaging session. Really captivating webinar and with some good insights, relevant insights, and I'm sure the audience agrees with that. So a quick reminder to the audience, please post your questions on Zoom in the Q&A section or any platform that you have joined. Please post your question in the comment section. Another option is you can interact live with Neeraj. Please raise your hand and I can unmute you and you can ask your questions live. So let's begin with the Q&A now, Neeraj. I see a few questions lined up.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So
but let's start with this one question from Ajay.
Yeah.
So Ajay says, my team is doing great work using Google Analytics. How will behavior analytics optimize my marketing? Why should we fix a system that's already working so well for us? And what is the importance of behavioral analytics as compared to Google Analytics?
Thank you, Ajay. I think Very relevant question, because I was in a meeting today, and there are multiple stacks offering different kind of analytics and everything kind of from a digital perspective. And this is what digital marketers normally talk about, that Google Analytics answers all my questions. I don't need anything else really to drive any of my initiatives. Well, that's a belief. I'm not here to fight beliefs. I'm only here to advocate different data sources or different ways of looking at customers. And behavioral science gives you a very, very different perspective. As I said, Google Analytics and all the tools that are available at you always give you what. They will not give you the why. And that is a question which is always remain unanswered. And it might not seem relevant in your current role, but as you keep climbing up the ladder and you start heading large businesses with the P&L responsibilities, the why, because then you are in a position, or you are in the job where you have to predict the future of your business. You have to drive where the consumer is heading. And that is where, if you have the understanding from a behavioral point of view, it will be of huge help. And that's what my belief is. I think a lot of organizations are kind of are agreeing with this belief. And if you look globally, some of the largest corporations have started investing in building large behavioral science teams. In fact, I'm taking too much time on this because I'm passionate about the subject and it's important. Some of the biggest government programs, the first guy actually who used behavioral science to a great extent was the American presidential elections, Barack Obama. And it's, if I'm not mistaken, 2008 was when he first fought the elections, and he used this data very effectively. And the next president also used those kind of data sources, and pretty effectively, to really win an election which nobody thought that he will win. So there are huge examples, big corporates beginning to buy into it. The question that it will answer is why, and I think it's important to have an answer to that question.
Perfect, Ajay. And I hope, Ajay, that answers your question. And we'll move on to the next one now. This will take from the Q&A window, Neeraj, if you can see as well.
Yes.
So the next one is from, yeah, go ahead, sir.
I think Lokesh is there. Is it legal to capture people's faces using infrared cameras? Answer is no. India, we still don't have a law. But, for a fact, and this was a few years back when we were in China. And in China, when you enter a bank, there is facial recognition cameras put in there. So then you can just go and complete the transaction. You don't need to give your bank account number. You don't need to give your credit card details. There's facial recognition which recognizes you and you can complete your transactions. But China is a bad example because the laws that govern and the way they control things, it's not possible in a democratic world. So this facial recognition thing started off big time as an experiment in San Francisco. Within 1 month or a couple of months of those experiments starting, human rights people and a lot of people just clamped down on it, saying it's a huge invasion of people's privacy, and it was not allowed to a great extent. And that's why I gave the example of people who don't exist but yet are kind of real. So there's surrogate pseudo personalities. If you go back 10 years, the second life personalities that are created, and that helps people to create segments which really are used or created without showing actual people using infrared cameras at any point of time. But short answer is, legally it's not, we're not allowed to capture people's faces. The second question, Surendra Kumar, how are we driving data security across countries? Each country a very different stage of maturity. A lot of maturity coming into the US, European market, Indian market far from mature. But it's, I think companies have understood the importance of data security and understood the harm that data breaches will wipe out companies if there are breaches in data. So they are taking a lot of measures themselves. As I said, the data protection law is not yet put in action in India. It has not yet become law, but it should happen at any point of time. Industry is fighting for it. The IT world is fighting for it. Organizations are fighting to make it happen. Some of the big players who will face a huge amount of rejigging of their business models are resisting this change. I think they will fail. Better sense will prevail, and very soon we will have a law. But yeah, India is not amongst the top 10, 20 or 25 countries driving data security. The North American markets and the European markets are far ahead of this curve. Well, how does Chaitali is asked how the security in media world operates? That's a question which will require a very long answer. Maybe we can walk you through it separately. But these are all proprietary databases that we have built over the 10 to 15 years. What I would also like to share is there's a lot of data that the government of India puts out. If you look at the National Health Survey, they have done a survey with 5 lakh households across the country. And there is huge amount of data within that survey. And that survey is done over a 2-3 year period. So if you dive deep into it, gov.in has a lot of data sets now available. It started in United States where a lot of government data is now publicly available. A lot of government data is available. We use all of this RBI data, we use banks data, all kinds of surrogate data which are available to create a customer strategy or a customer profile in that context, which will really help organizations do what they do. So yes, it requires a much more detailed discussion, maybe on another day, or we can have a separate chat on that. Sumona, how can
Neeraj, is that
yeah.
okay if I can read out the question?
Sure,
It's a long
sure.
one and the audience needs to hear the question as well.
Sure.
So this is from Sumana. How can we ensure that synthetic data is not malicious to drive specific outcomes for entities creating the data? If big data can be manipulated, synthetic data should also be audited for misuse, right? Is the question.
I think absolutely. I tried to answer that in the presentation. Maybe I was not very explicit enough when I spoke about it. But yes, I think any data is manipulated. I won't say can be manipulated. Is manipulated. I said it, I think at the beginning, that when I'm in a meeting with the CEO, the distribution team, the sales team, and that is manipulation of data, right? They are saying, oh, we turned around sales by 40%. But it is manipulation also in the kind of metrics that they want to present of being successful, right? Everybody wants to demonstrate that what we're doing is working in the market. So otherwise also there is huge amount of misuse of manipulation of synthetic data, which is possible. Real life data, in fact, all the time. More so in the case of synthetic data. So you have to be very careful when you're using all these mechanisms to ensure that you have a good program in place.
So the next question is from Chaitali Dev. If we want to do marketing analytics and find out the buying pattern from the social media interactions, then which different sources can give us the browsing data? Also, like Google uses FLOC API, Federated Learning APIs in Chrome. Do other similar APIs available?
So yeah, Flock is the most popular one. Federated Learning Apps is, I think I touched upon it in the presentation, which is, there are some other APIs available, but not really tried and tested in terms of efficacy in the marketplace. So yes, social media interactions, understanding buying patterns, and there are multiple ways to do it besides what you have mentioned. But again, as I said, it will require a lot more time to discuss that piece. But yes, Flock and other pieces are the obvious ones which a lot of people use at this point.
Great. The Q&A is going great, audience. Thank you so much for the enthusiasm. And we'll try and take as many questions given the time constraints. We'll take this one more from Roop Neeraj. This is, without invading privacy, will AI be practical, reliable enough in healthcare, given that there is a lot at stake?
Use of data analytics AI, ML is probably at its most mature stage in pharma and healthcare. It has evolved beyond being a science. I would say marketers are way behind the curve compared to the healthcare systems. In fact, I for a fact can share with you that the entire US healthcare, the entire US pharma programs are really driven by technology, data, and analytics. And in fact, thanks to data, thanks to technology, we had a vaccine going in under 8 months of COVID hitting us. So that itself gives you, it's a testament to technology which is driving it. How is that? In fact, in the US market, they use that from a marketing perspective also very well. Doctor engagements, specialist engagements, the kind of solutions that are provided from a healthcare perspective to patients, OPD patients, in hospital patient, all of that has evolved peak time. And I think they are at the forefront. The pharma industry is at the forefront of driving those innovations, not from a marketing perspective, but sheerly from a healthcare perspective.
Okay, I mean, we are way beyond time, Neeraj, and I'm so sorry to keep you here, but we'll take this one last question.
Sure.
This is in the chat window, and it's a good one to conclude. So any suggestions or any repository links for algorithms from your side, which you would suggest? And there's another question in relation to that for the startups, really, for the ones who are starting with data-driven marketing. How can marketers, organizations get started with the data-driven marketing to improve performance?
I think I spoke about it at the beginning that there are, and that's
just to conclude,
the guys
summarize.
who kind of heroes, and then there is a full evolution which is required. See, there is a huge amount of information on the internet, but I am not a subscriber of the internet school of learning to a great extent, where future trends are concerned or how we need to learn, unlearn some of the things are concerned, because it comes with a lot of experience. So there are a lot of forums where very seasoned practitioners, and in fact, we at Security, and I can tell you that I'm part of some of the largest global data platforms, Indian analytics leadership programs that are implemented by some of the thought leaders in the space. Those are forums where we interact with a lot of industry leaders and understand what is happening in this context. I personally don't really look up the net for sources of information. I can check and come back to you with some of the good starting platforms where you'll get some basics in place or understanding in place. Maybe Shama, you can enable it, remind me, and I can share that information.
Perfect. That's a great way to conclude, and definitely I'll keep reminding you, and we'll let you know on the questions that we haven't answered as well.
Sure.
Now for the concluding part, Neeraj, I request you to pick the best question so that, as mentioned before, I can reward them with the Taylor Scholarship of $200. So if you can just glance in the answered section. We have taken a few questions, and kindly pick the winner.
This is really unfair, and I think, can I say all the questions were relevant? But if you ask me, I would say, can I choose two?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, Sumana, which is how can we ensure synthetic data is not malicious, and Chaitali, which is the marketing analytics one, which spoke about the Flock APIs.
Perfect. This is great. So we have two winners for the scholarship, and we are more than willing to reward the winners here. Sumana and Chaitali, congratulations on winning the Taylor Scholarship. We'll get in touch with you with the reward shortly. We've enjoyed having you with us, Neeraj. It's been a complete honor and pleasure. Please accept this certificate of appreciation from the Institute, a small gesture. We are grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and amazing insights drawn from your journey and experience in the industry.
Thank you. Thank you.
So if you scan the QR code on the screen, it'll take you to a dedicated Hall of Fame page that we have created for you, which will hold a recording of this session.
Okay.
Give it a few minutes, we'll upload the video, but here is where you will find the recording of the session.
Sure.
And we'll upload this recording on the YouTube channel as well.
Okay.
Thank you once again, Neeraj, for joining us.
Thank you.